Tantor Audio presents Taken by Angeline Fortin. Narrated by Antony Ferguson. People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. Stephen Moffat, Doctor Who. 1. August 15th, 2013. In the Scottish borders. Give 'em what they want. It had been her father's mantra from the moment fame descended upon her, which was, in fact, about the same time that what she wanted ceased to matter. "Miss Thomas! Miss Thomas! Over here!" Scarlett turned and flashed a practised smile for the photographer. Putting on a pleasant public face when one was burdened by jet lag was an acting skill Scarlett Thomas had yet to fully master, but the crowd seemed pleased enough by her performance. "Miss Thomas, how does it feel to be back at Dunskirk Castle?" one of the reporters asked as her agent-cum-bodyguard, Tyrone Halliday, ushered her through the throng with a firm hand at the small of her back. Scarlett considered the looming facade of the medieval castle at Dunskirk, which sat nestled in the lazy roll of the Cheviot Hills at the Scottish borders, not far from England's northern border. Light and shadow marked the 6 turreted corner towers, punctuating the many angles of the curtain walls. 2 soaring towers stood like sentinels at the center of the castle, flanking the entrance. The jutting spires drew her eyes upward 50 feet, just as they always had, to the decorative stonework of the crenellations, merlons, and maculations. Fancy words she had learned from an architectural historian that merely named the parts and pieces of the castle fascia that covered the original parapets and more functional battlements beneath. While O'Broch Castle, the fictional setting of the blockbuster Puppet War movies, was written as a dark, gloomy place, Scarlett had been pleased when the location scouts chose this fairy tale location for the final setting. Life within those castle walls had felt more like home than Hollywood ever could throughout the more than 5 years of filming 3 movies. Like Dunskirk O'Broch, Scarlett often felt she was all gloss and glamour on the outside, with so much more veiled beneath the surface. Some things she now feared might never be seen again. "It's wonderful," she answered honestly before adding her required publicity blurb when Tyrone's fingers pressed into her back. "I'm happy to be back to mark this momentous occasion. There's been rumors Anatolio might be considering another sequel," one of the reporters shouted over the crowd, thrusting his mic at her. "Would you be willing to make another Puppet War movie?" The young adult fantasy series by Marco Anatolio, with its 3 installments, Marionette, Ventriloquist, and finally Broken Strings, had been literary bestsellers topping the charts for years. The movie rights had been bought a month after the first book's release, and at 15, Scarlett had been cast as the brilliant but nerdy Finlay Adams, launching her into instant stardom. That had been 9 years ago, and still she would always be Finlay Adams to many. "I am always open to new projects." Scarlett smiled tightly and moved on. Flashing another smile, echoed by her agents, they worked their way up the crowd. The castle door seemed to shrink into the distance, as if she was working away from it rather than toward it, but Scarlett forged on, ignoring the reporters. Instead, she focused on the fans who lined the cordoned-off avenue, signing autographs and taking selfies with them as she progressed. "Rowdy crowd here today," Tyrone muttered, blocking off the press of the crowd with one massive arm. "Better watch it. That one might not give your hand back." "Don't be mean," Scarlett murmured under her breath. "They're just excited. I seem to recall a bit of the same from you when you first met my mother."
"We've been over this," he said with a grimace at the reminder. "I did not fall at her feet. I tripped over the edge of the rug."
Scarlett had to grin at that. Her mother, Olivia Harrington, star of screens big and small, seemed to have many frayed carpets surrounding her person at all times. Assuming what Tyrone claimed was true, of course. Gently tucking her hand free from her overly enthusiastic fan, Scarlett moved slowly onward toward the canopied platform set up just outside the castle's outer stockade. They were a rowdy bunch, Scarlett acknowledged, but she didn't mind. These were her people. She understood them, appreciated them, probably because she had once been just like them. Scarlett smiled inwardly. Once. She still was. A geek, a fangirl. She understood them better than she had ever gotten anyone in Hollywood. Like Potterheads, Tributes, and Tolkienites, the Puppet War fanbase, aptly labeled Puppeteers, was one of the biggest fandoms on the planet. Even years after the last movie, Broken Strings, and having never made another movie, Scarlett and her co-stars were still followed and obsessed over. They all made frequent public appearances at conventions like Comic-Con and WizardCon, and were constantly targeted by the paparazzi. "I love your dress, Miss Thomas," one of her fans gushed as Scarlett signed an autograph. Scarlett smiled her thanks. The August day was surprisingly warm, and she donned a floor-length white cotton maxi dress with an empire waist and tiny spaghetti straps to offset the heat. Tyrone had insisted she had a jacket for the formality of the occasion, so she donned a teal-cropped denim jacket. To promote her signature bohemian style, she wore several long brown leather necklaces and bangles with silver charms and medallions, as well as brown leather gladiator sandals. Crosswise over her shoulder she carried her favorite Stella McCartney Falabella tote. "And your hair, Miss Thomas," another gushed. "I love it." "Do you really?" she asked, running a hand over her newly shorn pixie cut. "I've heard it reported that I may have lost my identity in cutting it." Scarlett cast an arch look at her agent, who had agreed with the assessment. She had indeed been known for her long, wavy hair. It was part of the reason she'd cut it so dramatically. "We do," her fans assured her, and Scarlett cast them all a very genuine smile. "Thank you so much. You're all just wonderful." They beamed, but another reporter pushed his way through them, ruining the most pleasant moment of her day thus far. She recognized him as one of the sleazy London tabloid reporters who'd had nothing better to do for years other than haunting Dunskirk Castle during taping. "Miss Thomas, what about the rumours regarding a secret romance with your Puppet War co-star, Grayson Lucas? Are they true?" "Aren't they always?" Scarlett thought bitterly, as the crowd held their collective breath waiting for a response, though she refrained from voicing the sour comeback, knowing they would only ignore the sarcasm and interpret the words as verbal confirmation of the rumours. The worst thing about fame was that assumption that they all knew her, knew what she wanted and what she thought. How she longed for the days before all this had come about, when she had lived her own life or even felt as though she had one. When she hadn't been a star, but just a girl who wanted the same things all the girls wanted. "Mr. Lucas!" The reporter shifted direction when Scarlett didn't answer, and she cringed, realizing that her former co-star was just a few steps behind her. "What do you have to say to the rumors? Are they true?" "Aren't they always?" Grayson's intonation of her thoughts was far more kindly presented, as he slung a casual arm over her shoulder and gave them all a roguish wink. Scarlett might have been much like Finley Adams in personality and temperament, but Grayson Lucas completely embodied his character. Flynn Jackson. A more cocksure, vain, cavalier idiot had never walked the earth. In her opinion, he personified the living, breathing proof that every high in life came with a downside. Once, just once, during the filming of the second movie in the trilogy, Ventriloquist, Scarlett had made the mistake of going with Grayson to an awards show, sharing the red carpet with him. Tyrone had imagined it to be a brilliant publicity stunt, and he had been right. The media, the paparazzi, had latched onto the idea of Finley and Flynn. The nerd and the jock who fought their feelings and were then torn apart in the books and movies, finally together in real life. Rumor, tabloids, photoshopped pictures. The press had created a relationship for them that wasn't any more factual than the fictional one. Grayson had thought it should be. It helped them both, he insisted, kept the spotlight on them. A spotlight Scarlett had been trying to step out of for the past 4 years.
"Gie us a kiss," one of the Scottish tabloid reporters shouted.
They think I actually like this fool. Her lips parted of their own accord, as if she might voice the thought, but Grayson took advantage of her moment of silence, bending her back over his arm and taking the kiss the crowd wanted before she could protest. The onlookers went wild, and Scarlett knew it would be all over social media the next day. Back on her feet, Scarlett steadied herself and resisted the urge to swipe the back of her hand across her lips while Grayson waved to their fans. Turning on her heel, she stalked away while Tyrone rushed to keep up with her.
"What an idiot!"
she hissed from the corner of her mouth.
"I can't believe anyone would think I'm in love with that."
"Appearances, Scarlett."
"I'll tell you what you can do with your appearances, Tyrone."
Reaching the platform, Scarlett determinedly pasted her public smile back on and greeted the Director of Commerce and Tourism from Historic Scotland, the Historic Preservation Society that maintained the castle, and the President of the Scottish Borders Council.
"Good afternoon, Miss Thomas. Welcome to Dunskirk Castle. Again, of course. We're so glad that you could be with us today to mark this occasion."
The occasion was the full restoration of Dunskirk Castle and its transference from private property to a national historical site and public museum.
"I'm honored to have been asked."
Scarlett smiled at the effusive welcome and shook hands with the others who gathered around. Castle staff, government officials, and the Director of Exhibit Operations, Darren Coleridge, who was in charge of the afternoon's festivities. More hesitantly they greeted Tyrone, who was as harmless as a teddy bear, but intimidated effortlessly, since he was built like an ox, bald-headed, and in possession of a neatly trimmed goatee that Scarlett suspected he maintained solely for its menacing addition to his already sinister persona. Grayson followed her up on stage, while Scarlett turned away to greet two of their other Puppet War co-stars, who were also attending the ceremony.
"Hayton, how are you?"
she asked, as they brushed air kisses and hugged lightly.
"Michael!"
A more sincere hug. Hayden Walsh and Michael Ford had portrayed Nora Bankman and Christian Cameron in the series. The muscle, as it were, in the storyline. Scarlett had gotten on with Michael especially well. The four of them sank down into a row of chairs set behind the podium. Grayson managed a seat right next to her, but Scarlett studiously ignored him and gave her attention to Coleridge as he stepped up to make his opening remarks. The photographers in the crowd kept their attention on her and Grayson, snapping away and leaving Scarlett with little choice but to force a brittle smile to her lips.
"And, of course, we have to thank the director and producers of The Puppet War for bringing worldwide attention to Dunskirk by choosing it as the setting for their movies. But it is the four young people who are with us today to whom we owe our greatest thanks. Their tireless efforts in promoting Dunskirk and raising the funds to open this museum today will never be forgotten. Now, I heard that Miss Thomas only recently gave a commencement address at Vanderbilt University when she graduated there this spring, magna cum laude, with a degree in English literature. I thought I might take advantage of her recent practice and ask her to say a few words today. She graciously accepted, so please welcome, if you will, Scarlett Thomas." Applause swept through the crowd as Scarlett stood once more, swinging her crossbody tote forward and fishing inside for her speech. At the podium she adjusted the microphone height.
"Thank you, Mr. Coleridge. Your request for a few words is far kinder than what my professors required of me during my recent finals, and for that I thank you."
She nodded to the director and focused on the crowd before her, ignoring the mocking eyes boring into her back.
"Many of you gathered here today know this place only as the living representation of Dunskirk Castle, a piece of the Puppet War come to life. But Dunskirk Castle has its own story to tell, one far more profound than fiction. I am very glad to be back here today as we celebrate its place in the history of the Scottish borderlands. I am no historian, as my professors can attest."
Scarlett paused as light laughter sprinkled through the crowd, ignoring Grayson's scoff behind her.
"No, it's true. Deep down I'm just a fangirl like many of you. Before I first came to Dunskirk, the only castle I ever dreamed of visiting was Hogwarts. Now, knowing each nook and cranny of this dear old thing as I do, I know that Dunskirk will stand a far greater test of time than any book could, than any movie might dare. I hope you will all keep that in mind as you walk through these halls today."
With a few more short sentences, Scarlett finished, and smiled as the crowds applauded. Turning, she shook Coleridge's hand once more and accepted his thanks, but before she could return to her seat, Grayson sneered, "Always a nerd, Scarlett." Irritation roiled through her.
"Bite me, Grayson."
Always. Unable to sit next to him a moment longer, Scarlett slipped discreetly down the steps and headed for the castle entrance as Coleridge introduced the next speaker.
"Scarlett,"
Tyrone whispered urgently, rushing to her side.
"Come on, the fans love it. The two of you."
Shaking off his hand before he could grasp her arm, Scarlett kept walking.
"But I don't. You know I don't."
She didn't have to ask why Tyrone was in favor of promoting a match, even a fabricated one, between her and Grayson. She already knew. Tyrone was close friends with Grayson's agent, close enough to take a favor and give one when necessary. Though Grayson Lucas was known around the world for his part in the Puppet War, new roles had been slow in coming, and Grayson's Hollywood tastes couldn't survive without either an opportune casting or more opportune publicity.
"I don't know why I haven't fired you yet."
"Because your mother hired me."
"Because you slept with her."
Tyrone just grimaced.
"Come back out here, smile and wave. I'll make it up to you."
"How about you go away and hope I don't shoot either you or Grayson with this stupid pistol you make me carry around?"
Scarlett patted the small lump weighing down the bottom of her tote. She'd made her agent angry, but couldn't fight it in herself to care. The changes she planned on making in the days and weeks to come would no doubt be far more upsetting than her refusal to sit next to her former co-star. Though she'd already told him, he would understand the seriousness of her intentions soon.
"I'm going inside. Go say whatever you want, but I'm not coming back out until he's gone."
"Scarlett, damn it, come back here."
Scarlett kept walking. She'd lived at the whims of others too long to heed his call. To be at her parents' beck and call another moment. This was her time, and she meant to seize it. 2. Once inside the castle doors, the noise of the crowd faded into a mausoleum-like oppression. The thick walls had that effect, but the dank darkness she remembered from the years she'd spent filming in the castle was washed away by the museum-quality lighting and dehumidifiers that had been brought in. Today, the stone walls were awash with soft light. The great hall, now a cordoned-off maze of red velvet ropes, leading to a modern desk of light birch standing below a large sign bearing prices for admission.
"Miss Thomas."
A man of later years standing behind the desk straightened as she approached. Despite his neat white shirt and dark slacks, he had an unkempt appearance, and rather looked like the house-elf Dobby from the Harry Potter movies without the elfish ears. This man's were big enough still. He had layers of wrinkles folded deeply into his skin. He seemed almost as old as the fortress itself, but there was merriment in his twinkling blue eyes and vibrancy in his demeanor that would probably carry him a few centuries more, she thought whimsically.
"Good afternoon,"
she greeted him as she approached the desk, skirting around the barriers.
"We wasn't expecting ye inside yet, but welcome to Dunskirk, lass. Welcome back, I should say. Would ye care to take a turn through the exhibits?"
he added in a thick brogue, gesturing to the far end of the hall where a sign reading, "Enter here," was posted.
"I imagine you could use a bit of time for yourself, away from all the fuss."
It was like he was reading her mind. Scarlett wanted nothing more than to escape the people waiting for her outside. No, that wasn't exactly right. Really, she wanted nothing more than to escape her life in general. The life that wasn't her own. A life overpopulated with unwanted attention and hateful humans.
I ken what ye mean. I'd wager you've had a hard go of it.
Huh? What?
Had she said that out loud? Scarlett groaned. It wasn't like her to make a slip like that in public, where any random spectator might hear and misinterpret her words, passing them off, out of context, of course, on social media. If word got out that she was planning a life without them, the circus would be unimaginable.
I meant...
Dinna fash yourself, lass. I kenned what ye meant and willna say a word. On my honour.
Thank you.
Donell, lass,
he said, tapping his name badge with one thick, bent finger.
Donell,
she nodded, reaching out to shake his hand. He was stronger than he looked, his handshake firm.
Might I head in, do you think? I'd like to take a peek before all the crowds enter.
Of course, lass. No problem at all. You're deserving of a break from all your troubles, aren't ye?
Scarlett smiled and pivoted toward the entrance, but paused when he cleared his throat. Turning back, she sighed inwardly as the man lifted a pen and paper suggestively in her direction.
I ken I shouldn't ask, but, I was wondering, could ye...
Her smile wasn't Oscar-worthy, but it was smile enough to please the clerk, who beamed as she neared the desk.
It's no problem at all, Mr.
She referred to his name tag again.
Donell, shall I make it to you?
Nay, lassie,
he protested with an engaging grin.
To my granddaughter, Catherine, if ye please, lass. She's quite keen on ye see. An autograph would send her o'er the moon.
Scarlett smiled at that, wondering when she had last been over the moon about anything. She was just so tired of it all. Well, not the fans. She rather enjoyed their enthusiasm, but the daily grind of fame. Fame she hadn't done much to deserve.
I think ye underestimate yourself, lass. You're a bonny thing, to be sure, and sweet, too. No at all like the things they write about ye,
he assured her. Familiar enough with all the things, true and false, that had been written about her, Scarlett didn't bother to ask what Donell might have read about her, but was confused by his initial statement. What did he mean that she underestimated herself? She started to ask, but Donell rushed on before she might question him.
To Catherine, if ye dinna mind.
Not at all,
she assured the odd little man with a smile, and took up the pen and paper Donell pushed across the desk.
Catherine with a K?
Aye, lassie.
He beamed at her, his eyes twinkling as he watched her write a short note on the page to accompany her signature.
K-A-T-H-A-R-I-N-E.
Ah, with an A,
she said softly, and finished it off with a flourish.
How's that?
Donell scanned it, and if possible, smiled even more broadly.
Lovely, just lovely, Miss Thomas. You're very kind, lass, to do this. Thank ye so much.
I'm happy to do it.
Scarlett waited patiently as he stood grinning at her.
Might I go through, then?
Of course, of course.
Donell fanned out several brightly printed brochures on the desk and pushed them toward her.
Some information on the different exhibits.
Thank you.
Scarlett thumbed through them, skimming over the bolded titles distractedly. Sir Walter Scott, Rob Roy and Beyond, The Great War in Dunskirk, Border Textiles, Flodden, 500 Years and Pong to PlayStation. The Infinite Lives of Video Games. Well, that might be interesting.
Aye, well, will ye be needing a guide then, lassie?
No, I think I can make my way around this particular castle without one,
she said with a smile that had him nodding.
Of course ye can,
the man hastened to assure her, sweeping an arm toward the sign that bore an arrow pointing in the proper direction.
Take your time, lass. Be sure to mind the armory exhibit, lass,
he called after her as she turned to leave.
I'm sure ye'll be interested in what it will show ye.
I'll be sure to check it out. Thank you, Donell.
Scarlett smiled over her shoulder.
You've been very kind.
No at all, lassie. My pleasure. I hope ye find what you're looking for. Her sandals scuffed softly against the stone floors as Scarlett walked the long hall within the castle's curtain wall in silence, flipping idly through the pamphlets Donell had provided, but mostly just absorbing the calm nothingness of it all. There had been very few moments like that for her in the past decade, and a sigh of contentment escaped her. The hall was dimly lit with faux torches lighting the way. Backlit displays dotted the wall between the torches, giving a historic overview of Scottish borders history, along with a timeline. There were castles like Hermitage, Kelso, and Jedburgh, along with Dunskirk. Scarlett grazed over the words on the wall absently. She hadn't been joking out there when she said she wasn't a historian. Dates and places meant nothing without the emotion that they evoked in the people of the time. That was why she'd majored in English Lit. It was words that touched her and held her attention. Once she reached the Peel Tower, the oldest part of the castle, the hallway widened into a brightly lit gallery dotted with displays on Mary, Queen of Scots, paintings, jewels, and a reproduction of her death mask, an elaborate gown that looked like it was spun from gold. Following the path lights to the second floor, she found the armory exhibit Donell spoke of. Pacing slowly around the perimeter of the vast tower, Scarlett studied the paintings on the walls as she circled the room. Most were scenes of the Battle of Flodden, done in different styles, from the simplicity of the medieval era to the thick oils of the Impressionists. Watercolors, drawings, even a Burne-Jones marble relief, all depicting different aspects of the battle. The glory, the gore, so much red. Like literature, art had more impact on Scarlett than all the history books in the world's libraries. She could almost see the battle, touch it, feel it. One large oil bore a scene of rugged, kilted soldiers attacking a more tidily garbed army with swords and pikes. Between the art displays were battle-axes, longbows, and long pikes 15 feet in length. On pedestals dotting the room, smaller artifacts from the battlefield, like cannonballs, an Englishman's plate armor, and a Scotsman's brooch, were set under plexiglass. A cannon dominated the center of the room. One round pedestal bore a heavy sword held up by a plexiglass stand. Unlike the no-nonsense weaponry on the wall, this one was a Scottish claymore with an ornate grip of dark wood with a swirling grain inlaid with metal filigree that looked like gold. On the hilt and the ends of the pommel and crossguard were huge, smooth stones of amber, almost as large as chicken eggs. It didn't look like the sword of a soldier, to be sure. Scarlett leaned in to read the tiny brass plaque on the side of the pedestal. Scottish claymore, found on the battlefield of Flodden. Running her fingers lightly over the engraved inscription, she pondered the implication of those words. Found on the battlefield of Flodden, because its bearer had died there, most likely. Found because there was no one left to pick it up. Unexpected grief squeezed Scarlett's chest. Sorrow too great for the mere mention of some long-dead Scotsman, but it gathered heavily in her heart none the less. Scarlett lifted her fingertips to the sword's edge. Though it looked dulled with age, the blade was unexpectedly razor-sharp and sliced the pad of her forefinger. Flinching back, she watched blood well through the narrow cut, and her head swam unexpectedly. The darkness that should have normally accompanied such a head rush was overwhelmed by a blinding gleam of light. Blinking, she found the sword's after-image burned into her lids. "Why can't you ever just play along, Scarlett?" She turned to find Grayson Lucas assembling through her still spotty vision as if he were in a Star Trek transporter beam. "It's publicity, just publicity." "It's not just publicity," she argued, sucking the sting away from her fingertip. "It's my life as much as yours, and I won't play these games any more with you. There are people out there who think they know what happened between us when nothing did. Men who have treated me differently than they should have because of things you've said to the press. I don't want that kind of attention." Grayson Lucas scowled down at her with none of the boyish charm that had been on display for the crowds outside. The sight wasn't surprising. This was the Grayson she knew. "Bullshit. We all want the attention. It's why we do what we do. We all want it.
I don't.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?